Just a question, and I discussed this with Yanni during the break. The question that Yanni and I have been asking since the beginning of Christchurch doing bus priorities is to see some evidence around how much that's increased patronage, because that's the purpose of it, is to increase patronage, and some evidence because since the first ones went in, nearly half the number of people are on buses.
Yeah, and we've talked...
And just to expand on that, because you can probably answer the question more holistically, sorry, is that also this morning we were discussing buses and how do we actually get people on buses, and wouldn't this money be better spent on something like that that will see people on buses rather than a bus lane? Sorry.
That's fine. Can I just take a moment to introduce John? Many of you know John, but he's just been appointed as our PT infrastructure principal. So is looking to get a holistic view over the whole program that we've got, all of it, and help us work through that. I'm going to jump in and talk to that a little bit because we have talked about it before, and yes, we have an upcoming briefing that we're going to talk to some of that. However, the thing to understand with the evidence is a lot of the bus priority measures that we currently have in place around the city, we put in pre-earthquake and with a different route system in place. So there's been a lot of change in the city since the earthquakes, and so it's pretty hard to provide you with some of that evidence. Okay, and we do know that bus patronage numbers are declining. What I will get together over the next, we'll do a piece of work to get together the evidence, and we will need to look around the world at evidence. And we've talked about this before as well, that research shows that if you improve reliability, it's a combination of all of these things. You improve reliability. It's got to be it's got to be an easier route to work than jumping in your car. And so it's got to be easier to get to work on a bus or by bike or some other means than it is by car to get people to change their habits. I know. So, because that's what we are looking to get people to do, is to change what they would normally do, to choose to take a bus. So we're working on that, and part of that is the bus priority program of work. And it is not just about bus lanes, it is also about getting through intersections, bus gates, jumping queues. There's all sorts of interventions that can be done. So can I hold the answer to the question until we get the briefing early in the new year and we get ECAN on board as well?
So shouldn't we have had the briefing before the decision?
This is based on what has been programmed from the PT Futures program, and you've had briefings on that. So we are updating you again, providing you more information. You've had a lot of this information in the past.
Because in a climate emergency, we should be spending our money wisely, getting the best bang for the buck. It's kind of where my question comes.
Yeah, and investing in PT is... You've told us is that.
And sorry, this fund that we're looking at right now,
yes,
is actually targeted to exactly what we're actually putting it to.
Yes, it is. So,
which was actually a condition of
the investment case. So the investment case in this program, the investment case that went to Treasury to get the $40 million from government, from the CRAF funding, is to spend $5 million on projects identified in the PT Futures business case, which you endorsed in December last year.
So Lynette, just
so that's
to
what
be,
this is
to be
about.
Clear, obviously the city's been through a rough time with the earthquake, and also the bus network change, so it makes it difficult to actually get some good evidence. But the research
we're working on it.
Backs this, and there will be international evidence around actually bus priority lanes and the effectiveness of it. And we'll be having a briefing in the new years just to go over PT as well, which will involve ECAN, broad PT pitches, not just this. Do you have a question, Zara?
Yeah, so just to follow on from the point you made before about the continual improvements. So all the spending over the last 10 years to create those efficiencies and make it, a better service has not resulted in an increase in numbers. So are you saying for the last 10 years we've not spent the money wisely?
No, I'm not saying that. We have spent the money wisely and we've done the best we can, but this is not a debate as staff we can really enter into in this environment. We will come to you with a briefing and provide you with the evidence of why we plan to do what we're doing. You as a council, through your long-term plan and annual plan processes, have told us that PT is important, and there's worldwide evidence that, and you've signed up to the climate change emergency, which says we need to change our travel patterns and how we travel. We need to reduce emissions. So we need to encourage people to get on different modes. So it's a big and complex story that we are building on. But this is not for, I can't debate this with you here.
And you don't need to debate with council.
Just questions.
Yeah. Right. So, do we have any? Yanni?
Thanks. Do we have a long list of like the actions in terms of the PT business case that we're responsible for?
When it was endorsed, it was roughly about this time last year. There was three key things that were taken out of it for the next 3 years, and one of which was progressing, working with ECAN on providing infrastructure for routes 17 and 28, which they're currently up for consultation on. And council's in behind that in February, March with their infrastructure consultation. Continuation with Lincoln Road bus priority, which was previous LTP agreed items, and that's progressing, and that'll be work in conjunction with increased frequency with their partners ECAN. And the other key thing in the next 3 years is building integration between the development of the RTI system, which is real-time information on the buses, to integrate with their traffic signals network, and that'll give us opportunities to, essentially it means that when a bus is approaching signalised junction, it can talk to it, it knows it's there, and then if it meets certain criteria, it potentially can give it priority. So that's a really good value for money improvement that we can deliver.
So just looking,
so the key three things, and then generally on top of that there would be the bus interchange, and then there's a program of bus priority improvements, and the CRAF fund that we've got from the Crown gives us the ability to bring the bus priority forward. And essentially the priorities we've established there is where we've got an identified problem with congestion, which contributes to, if we can get around that, contributes to improving the reliability of the bus service, which in conjunction with increased frequency and other measures, provides the best opportunity to create an improvement which drives patronage and creates a better option for people.
right, so just looking at the investment case, there's 7 intersection improvements. Could we not just choose to fund those through here?
So they're quite broad, and the business case is done at a high level. So there's quite a big gap between that and defining exactly what we've got to do. So in the context of the whole business case, intersections are quite a small value. So we can look at them holistically and do them together as one, and deliver them together, because they also coincide with other projects that are coming up as well. So it makes sense for us to look at them as one whole.
So each of the intersections will get done.
So that's 1.9.8 says bus transfer intersections improvements and minor works on all routes.
Yeah, 1 to 7. So is all the money that we've got going to go to all of those? Are they all being done, all 7?
No, so we've got there's $5 million in there that we've got a period of time to spend, and it's likely that some of these projects, for a number of different reasons, may be delayed, or they may go over the $5 million budget. So we need to have a level of flexibility and agility so we can move to another one. And the bus transfer intersections, they're relatively low value, so we want to be in a position where we've got them fully schemed and designed, so we can make a decision on whether we implement them in conjunction with these other projects. So the first year of work is essentially scheming, investigation, and potentially taking some to consultation.
I mean, it would have been good to maybe have a workshop on this, but
Sorry, this this is actually in line with the LTP that we approved just recently, Yanni, and also in line with the PT futures. Anne, did you have a question?
I just wanted to confirm that this discussion that we're having and the decisions that we're making here are because we endorsed that Greater Christchurch Public Transport Futures business case in December of last December. So you're just doing what we've asked you to do.
Correct, yes.
Right.
And these
So-
projects are aligned with that, and
Yeah.
it gets us in front. Of
Yeah.
the-
So the debate about what we do has actually happened. We've actually made that decision, and you're just implementing it with what
Yes.
we've got here. Right,
Yes.
great.
And
That was
there'll be
just-
further
just
discussions of
clarify that. Yeah.
Are these unravel as well?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Yanni.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask too, on a separate issue, is the toilet facilities for drivers, we were going to install 12 toilets at new bus
Sorry, is that part of the CRAF funding? No, you cannot
It
answer
is.
that.
It's in the
Sorry.
business case.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not.
part
No,
of
I
it.
just wanted to ask, given that we've heard, like, we've just seen bus routes getting cut because of
So,
the frequency, because of the driver shortage,
Sorry,
and there's legal
Yanni.
requirements.
Sorry, Yanni.
Are we responsible for the toilets?
Yanni,
we're not responsible.
can we just...
This
Are
is
you actually in a
joint-
position to
so
answer
the,
that question?
The business case is, you need to understand, the business case is a joint business case between us, EKEN, it's a Greater Christchurch business case, PT Futures. We've picked out the infrastructure-based projects as identified in the Treasury investment case for CRAF. It said infrastructure to improve bus priority. So we're going down that path. There are other parts of that business case that have been worked through, the Greater Christchurch PT Futures business case, that'll be worked through by joint agencies.
Don't get the two business cases confused, Yanni. Right, okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to go into debate. Does anyone want to debate this? Sarah? Okay, you want to close it? Okay, Andrew?
Thank you. I think it's been made clear once again from staff that bus priority improvements are about increased reliability and reduced journey times, and that in turn is the thing that would be expected to increase patronage. Now, on my Facebook page, there's a photograph of a bus which is on Riccarton Road. And notably, on the front of that bus and on the back of it, there is an electronic sign with 3 words, "Sorry, bus full." Now, that doesn't suggest that buses are running around the city empty. The 28X service, this is the express service from Littleton into the central city that runs every morning, is often full. That service is fast, takes about 20 to 25 minutes, and it's reliable. It's actually faster than driving. And it's not a stretch of the imagination to expect that that speed and that reliability are at least some of the reasons why that particular service is so popular. Again, that doesn't suggest that buses are running around the city empty. ECAN are currently consulting on improving the frequency of the 28 service, not just the express, but the whole service, as a result of high demand and high use. Again, that doesn't suggest that buses are running around the city empty. Last time I went to Church Corner, from here, I deliberately took the bus. I walked to the super stop at the hospital, I took the bus. I counted the number of cars I passed as I went along the very effective bus lane along Riccarton Road, and I stopped counting when I got to 30. I got to my destination at Church Corner far faster than I would have done if I'd driven, and I didn't have to worry about parking when I got there. We do need to be realistic. So there's some examples of what is working and how if we do more of this, things can work better. But we do need to be realistic. The earthquakes saw the central city in particular not operating normally for a number of years. PT previously had run around a central hub, the old bus exchange in the central city. It's pretty understandable that when people were working in industrial areas rather than the central city, they found it easier to drive than use buses. That's one reason why not only did people not use PT at that time, but they also got out of the habit. We've just come through, and in fact, we're still in COVID with restrictions that meant people weren't using public transport. Actually, people were restricted from and pretty anxious about using public space in general, let alone public transport. Not difficult, again, to see why people at that time might choose not to take public transport if they're concerned about the restrictions or indeed about catching COVID. But using the excuse that not enough people use public transport to support an argument that we shouldn't invest in PT infrastructure, so that people do use it, is actually a circular argument that can only possibly end up with the negative result that people don't use public transport. Investing in PT infrastructure is the step change that will get people onto the buses, and I've given you some really good examples of where that's working extremely well.
Anne?
Yeah, kia ora. Well said, Andrew. I think that we heard from people this morning who really want to use the buses, and we need to to invest to make them more efficient and to make them cheaper. We don't have any control over the reducing the fares, but we've supported people who are working on this. But we can make our system, our public transport system, we can work to make it more efficient and quicker so that people will see it as attractive and will use it. So thank you for the work that's being done here. I'm sure that it will achieve what we want to achieve through it. Thank you.
Yanni?
Yeah, there's no doubt that we do need to invest in public transport, but I'm just not convinced that what's been put in front of us is going to make a big difference. You know, there were 7 intersections that were identified in our intersection improvement program, and I get no certainty from the resolution we're passing that these will be done in a timely manner. The toilet issue alone, we should all be concerned about driver welfare, particularly because it's having a real impact on what we're trying to achieve, and yet we're not even allowed to talk about the infrastructure required for drivers. We heard through the LTP the importance of the bus lounges. So we've got one in Riccarton, but we weren't allowed to access this funding for a bus lounge in Eastgate, Linwood or the Palms. And it just seems to me like, really in terms of this funding, the other thing that we should be doing is looking at the areas that have had their bus services cut. Some of the recommendations in this report were around adding, realigning routes through Bromley, Linwood, Woolston, Aranui. We know that in Aranui, for example, that there is a undersupply of public transport and a lack of PT infrastructure. This is again mentioned in our business case that we agreed, but it actually doesn't. The acceleration funding that we're bringing forward doesn't actually address any of that. So I just don't think this money is going to the right place. I won't be supporting this today. I think we actually do need to think about the intersection improvements. They make sense. We've already identified them, but we need to get the evidence around the impact of bus priority versus those other things that we hear that can also make a difference, which is reliability, comfort. But a number of people in my area are complaining that the buses just aren't showing up on the scheduled timetable. It's good that we're investing in the real-time information, although there's been huge problems with that as well in the past. But fundamentally, I just think we should have workshopped this. We should have had an opportunity to look at what the whole list of priorities was and what the effectiveness was of each intervention before we agreed to fund this money.
Phil?
I think this is great. Staff have done a lot of work on these intersections, and the best thing about it is that we are finally spending some of the CRAF money, which the third letter is accelerate, and we've probably been sitting on it for a number of years, but since we've got it, probably even 4. But it's taken a while to get it to this point, and I think it's great. It's not our dough. Well, we haven't come up with it. Ratepayers haven't paid for it. Government nicely gave it to us. We're spending it. It's going to make intersections better and safer and faster, so it's good.
Thank you, Phil. I'll be supporting these recommendations. I think we just got to be a little bit careful not to look at one business case without looking at the actual investment cases as well. There's certain things we can do and there's certain things we can't do. This is coming not just from the CRAF investment case, but also the PT Futures business case that as a council we endorsed, and obviously that led to the LTP decisions. All the work has been done to actually try and slow it down, to relitigate work that we've had clear direction and evidence from people that actually are qualified to speak on this matter is just absurd, because like Phil said, this is about acceleration and we don't want to be slowing it down actually at a point of time where we're ready to spend the the money. So I support these, and I'll let Councillor Templeton close.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of bus priority. This morning we had some great deputations around creating equity in transport around free fares, and that would get people on buses. I'd love to hear some people coming in saying, telling us their stories about bus priority and how that would make them catch the bus, because the evidence would suggest that they
Sorry,
that they haven't.
Talk, please.
And yeah, thanks for speaking up there, Andrew, because it reminded me of what you said before, and it's good to hear that you'd seen a bus on Riccarton Road with a full bus sign. When I was a kid, they were everywhere. That was very common. You're always standing in the bus. Buses are old technology and not working for a modern city. We need to, if we are going to reduce carbon, we should not have 40-seater vehicles driving around the city with no one on them. And I know you'll say, oh no, there's lots of people on the buses. Not going to your area, Andrew, because I'm often down on a power road and see the buses going past with no one on them. I take photos and send them to fellow councillors and say, look, another bus with no one on it. So that's a large diesel vehicle burning carbon, increasing our carbon footprint, and next week the council increases its carbon footprint again, yet we're not walking the talk. We need a more efficient public transport system, one that does create equity, and looking backwards and saying, let's force more people onto buses is not going to do it. And the sooner this council realises that and starts actually reducing our carbon footprint, the better we will do for the planet. Because I hear a lot of people decrying that we need to do these things, but we're not actually doing them. The numbers are not there to support it. So we should not be doing it. I supported the free buses this morning because that, if we did it for a year, we could then actually see a tangible increase in the numbers of people on buses, and I would love to see that. But doing all this other hard work, hard infrastructure work to try and get people on buses, there's no evidence to suggest that that will work in this city. May work in other cities where I've heard councillors quote cities overseas, comparing them to ours with 20 times the population density. You're comparing apples with a mince pie. It's completely different for your diet. So start to be more realistic, and to put 2% of the population in one lane and everyone else in the other is just deliberately causing congestion, which is deliberately increasing our carbon footprint. So start walking the talk, Christchurch.
Sam, you've got an amendment you want to put forward?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike. Look, this just, I don't disagree with what's been said on both sides of the argument, to be really honest. But I was kind of thinking, in way of compromise, potentially I could just signal an amendment that just sits as 4, which just notes the committee's direction that these projects are to only, I guess the CRAF funding is ring-fenced to this, so should they exceed budget, then we just prioritise. So it's just putting a bit of discipline in the system where actually the government money that we're spending is tied to this, but no more council or ratepayer money is tagged to these projects, because some of the... Well, hang on. I mean, can I finish, Sarah, for once? The advice from staff is potentially there is some within it that may not exceed. So I just sort of a good compromise would be to...
Thanks, Sam. I'll see if there's a seconder that hasn't spoken, but I just want to get clarification, because my understanding actually these are actually budget lines already with council funding on them.
Yep.
Is that correct?
But if it's CRAF funding, we can set an expectation that doesn't exceed
You're more than welcome to move that amendment. I just want to clarify.
No.
Fair. There is actually already council funding for these projects, so it's not so much that we want to just spend the 5 million and that's it. We want to actually try and save 5 million of the council funding, but then still do the whole program of works. But I'm happy for you to put that forward as an amendment, because you haven't spoken yet. Thank you.
Cool.
Do you want to?
Yeah, shall I just email something while Melanie talks? If that's,
I'm happy to second that, Mike. I think it sounds very sensible, and I haven't spoken yet.
Didn't realise you were there. Okay. Do you want to wait till that amendment's up before you speak, Mel? No. Okay.
I wasn't going to say anything either, but public transport isn't necessarily just buses. This does say bus priority, but there's no reason to think that in the future it might not be a bus, it might be something else. So these sorts of initiatives don't, stop those sorts of things happening in the future. So that's all I wanted to say, because this isn't really about buses per se, this is about public transport.
Thank you. I'm just going to wait till Sam has that. Yes, you can ask a question of clarification. Lynette, sorry, there's a question coming your way.
So
Or is it coming to?
what Sam's saying, is it more than the 5 mil? Have we thrown money at it as well, or is it just the government money? I'm just a bit lost.
That's a question of staff.
No, for these one here, $5 million will cover it. There's some in there, for example, Ferry Road, which is, that's a significant portion to construct that. So it makes sense at the moment to do some investigations to get us in a position to act in the next NLTP period. So the Ferry Road one wouldn't be able to be constructed in the next 3 years, but the majority of the balance would be able to be completed within the next three years.
But to be clear, there are line items in the LTP out beyond this 3-year LTP period that cover all of these projects.
So
There's a program of work. There's a future program of work planned.
yes.
That covers all of these. That covers the PT program and aligns with the PT Futures business case. But it is out in the future, and we're bringing this back to get it
Bringing
done
it back because of this
because
money.
of the CRAF funding.
And
so
that's
it
always
will
been so
effectively
it's
save
saving
council.
us money in the future, so we'll have some left over.
Yes. Oh,
Thank you. Question on the amendment? Yep.
Question on the amendment for staff. So if this was passed, does that mean that, so for some of these projects, this is the 5 million's covering sort of preliminary work for future council things. If this passed, would that mean that we could do the planning work and then never actually do the projects themselves? Because it's limiting these projects to only CRAF funding. Would that be the direction that was given?
no, I think
Can you scroll that up? Because Jamie's in the way of it down the bottom. Oh, sorry, scroll down or whichever. If the amendment, so if the project grouping does not exceed the CRAF funding intended for public transport.
Sorry, what's for the officers? What is the risk of this? Is there any risk to this amendment?
Does it mean
for
that
the program of work that
so
from one?
So, for example, for Ferry Road, we do some planning and those kind of things as part of this.
But
then there's actual council funding for Ferry Road later on. Does this mean that we wouldn't then be able to do the work from the council funding? But this amendment would say don't do it.
The amendment would actually remove the funding from the long term.
The ability for us to do the work.
Done, yes.
Yeah.
Bigger projects and not that'll have a big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. There is
It's not
there is a
clear
risk that that's not clear to me. I'm a bit.
Well, sure there are. Yanni doesn't want action on climate change, so it's all good.
Point of order, that's outrageous.
Sorry,
I'm totally
In debate,
over it.
there's no points
I
of
didn't
order.
even hear, so I can't.
It's in our last
We
debate,
are
you were like, we
looking
need
to-
to do
Sorry,
everything
so-
possible.
If we can provide some comfort, we are looking to manage this as a grouping and not exceed the budget and do as much work as we can with the $5 million we've got. We can report on it as a grouping and make sure we come back. But there are other projects, but some of these projects are future funded, the bulk of it. So some of it is just to do planning and development, and the future funding for that is in future years of the LTP.
Further
And that is council
intersections
only,
now,
but
then.
to continue with those, we would be coming back to report on them anyway.
So sorry, can I just get one last clarification? Can we just scroll whatever up or down to the list of projects that you've identified? Oh, it's just the minutes, is it?
Let's go to the report.
So in the report, the list of projects,
So it'd be
1.91 to 1.98, that what you're actually planning to do will be able to be done within the $5 million CRAF.
Potentially, Ferry Road won't. The construction of Ferry Road won't fit in it. So the 7 above that will most likely fit within the 5 million, and Ferry Road will just be for planning only, and the balance of the work would have to be done in the later parts of the LTP.
Okay. So that's the risk that councillors are aware of. If they agree to it, Ferry Road may not get finished. Sorry, you've already spoken. Yep, sure.
So my understanding is in the business case, the bus stop the intersection improvements will cost 18.7 million. So, like, I'm just, in terms of the amendment that's being put, just trying to understand how much money, because we just were told that all these projects would be done through the CRAF funding, but clearly they won't, because
so these are portions. So the money you're talking about is across the whole 10-year program,
right?
And this CRAF program are taking portions of that, where the greatest problem is where we can deliver something for value now and spend the $5 million. So most effectively.
The budget stuff I'm still finding really confusing. Like, if you take 1.98, just to be really clear, it says bus transfer intersection improvements, minor works, all routes. That's 18.7 million. If we approve the CRAF funding, what happens? Does all that other money come forward to do all of those?
No.
It's not. There's,
So we need to be really clear on this. This is that's Mike. That's John. John said this at the start. This is to bring forward, and he said it just again. This is to do portions on these routes where the biggest problem is, where we will get the best bang for our buck, which is part of the whole philosophy of CRAF, is getting bang for your dollar, dealing with the biggest problems first. Around the intersections, and it says on the at 1.9.8, it is about minor works around the intersection. So we can do minor works to create better movement through the intersections. It's not about full big scale intersection upgrades, which is some of what was in the.
Yeah. Sorry, just to be clear though, in terms of the amendment, the money that we're getting from CRAF is 5 million, and the total investment case for us is 115 million. So if the amendment passes, does that mean we take 110 million off budget?
So when all the advice was given to council last year, the total portion of PT included the CRAF. So we got a recommendation from the business case which suggested a level of investment, and we showed how that was reflected in our LTP, and we talked about through our consultation documents, etc., that CRAF was going to pay for a portion of it.
Sorry, I'm just not sure what the amendment
Yanni, I'm going to adjourn so we can get some advice down from legal, unless legal's here, just on this. Actually, what I'm going to do while we wait for that advice is I'm just going to lay this on the table and go to the next item. We'll come back to this.